Hey everybody, Questwise here, and we are back after a little bit of a hiatus. Had a week off. It was my birthday, and so it was a big celebration day for that. We played some Dungeon Crawl Classics with some friends, and I had decided to take a week off from making videos. Had worked on a couple other projects that I had finished up with, yeah. But we're back. I want to talk to you today about a game that I discovered via YouTube. Had watched a few other people playing it, and people had mentioned it several times, and I decided to kind of go dive into it and pick it up. And that's Four Against Darkness by Ganesha Games. And I picked up a couple of the adventures as well too. So Caves of the Kobold Slave Masters, which is an adventure for levels 1 to 3, and the Three Rings, which is an adventure for characters level 3 to 4. And what's interesting about this is I've always been sort of interested in solo role-playing games, and there's two reasons for that. The first being that when I was in high school, and you guys have probably heard a lot of these stories already before, but the first game I was introduced to was Palladium Heroes Unlimited, and when I came back home after my cousin's friend teaching me how to play that, there wasn't any place where I lived that sold those games, sold any Palladium book stuff. I did sell some D&D. At the time, it was second edition, and that was through a Walden Books in our mall that we had nearby. But no Palladium book stuff whatsoever. I did meet a couple of friends in high school, and one of the friends actually ran us through, and I actually contacted this friend to see if he could remember what the game was, and he doesn't remember running it at all, or he doesn't remember what the game was at all. But we had so it was a small format book, and we had some graph paper and some miniatures, and he would tell us, we would put our miniatures in whatever order we wanted. We would open a door, and he would tell us what's in the room, and we would just fight it. And it's very simple, very basic. And then the other reason was that because of the fact that I didn't have any games readily available to me, but I was still so captured by the idea of role-playing, that before I actually purchased my Player's Handbook, D&D 2nd Edition Player's Handbook, I began to create my own sort of game. And because I didn't know anybody who played at the time in the area, I had to make it a solo role-playing game. And this is probably by far the first game I ever created, but it was by far the worst game that I ever created. It was a blend of ideas from comic books as well as video games I was playing at the time. And what I had done is I had taken the comic books I had, with the knowledge that I had gleaned over the summer about how characters, villains, and NPCs worked, and I created a superhero character on a sheet of paper. And I only had 6-sided dice at that point, so I was using 6-sided dice for everything that I had stolen from my grandmother's, Yahtzee set and a few other board games around the house. So it was very much a dice pool system, and I created NPC stats for different villains from comic books and video games. And basically it was, they had a set number I had to roll. So if, for instance, I was fighting a villain whose difficulty was a 4, I had to roll 4, 5, or 6 on a 6-sided die. And depending on what my character was like, I had to roll a certain number of dice to do that. Now, it was horrible, and it sounds like it's, very similar to a lot of dice pool games that are out there, but it was bad. It was really, really bad. So trust me on that one. So I've always been kind of interested in the solo role-playing game experience. There's another YouTuber out there. He goes by Artichoke Dip. I've watched his channel several times, and a lot of the stuff he does, I get where he's going with that, but I'm not really a big fan of the system that he was using. And I don't even remember what the game was called that he was using. That had a random chart in it that would allow you to sort of gauge random reactions from different creatures on the fly. But I've always been interested, and now I love, love the experience of sitting at a table with other friends, because it's just a much more enjoyable experience when you're at a table. Now, I've played some games online, and I love those games because it allows me to connect with people and friends from around the world to play a game where we would never normally get to play at a table. But it also, being at a table, sort of, you can feed off of the energy of the table, and I really love that experience. Sometimes, though, you don't have any friends around, or it's a day like it is today and it's kind of gray and it's rainy. And you just don't want to go outside. And so I picked up this Four Against Darkness, and I just finished playing a game. So I'm fresh from the table from playing a game. And I'll put up some of the pictures I took from, from the game that I just played. Literally finished it 5 minutes ago. And when I had heard about Four Against Darkness, I wanted to try this out because it claims to be a solitaire dungeon delving pen and paper game. Now, does it deliver on that? Absolutely. This is very well done. And at first, the author, and I will, I'm sorry, I will slaughter your name, Andrea. I'm terribly sorry. Andrea Slifgoy, but from Ganesha Games, and I thought that sounded familiar. And then I had played the miniature game that they had created several years ago called Song of Blades and Heroes, and a lot of it's sort of iterations of their supplements for that game as well too. I had a lot of fun playing that with a friend of mine, Jason. Great game, amazing miniatures game. You can use any miniatures you want from any line for that game. And it's really, really well done the way that the game. So I didn't realize until I actually got the game in my hands when I ordered this that it was from the same person, who created Song of Blades and Heroes. So as soon as I got it, I was super excited because I knew that there was going to be some quality in this game, some well done research and game design. So I open this book up, I read through it. It's very, very quick. It weighs in at 90 pages. I got this for $12, and the expansions I think were a couple dollars each. But it really hits the bill when you want to just play a role-playing game solo. Now, there are a few other board games out there on the market right now, notably from Cool Mini or Not, like Zombicide or Zombicide Black Plague, which can be played solo and gives you a little bit of an RPG experience with characters that level up and items gained and stuff as well too. And while those are great, they're very expensive. So the core box for either one of those is like $100, $90 to $100. If you have that kind of cash to invest in a game like that, go for it because they're wonderful and you get an amazing amount of great miniatures. If you're weighing in the price of the miniatures in with the game, then you're getting a great deal. But $90 to $100 is kind of a lot to sort of invest into a game. But I think the replayability you get from it is going to be an amazing thing. But for $12, you can pick this up, and again, it says it doesn't require miniatures. It only requires a pencil and some graph paper. It's a couple of dice. It uses 2 6-sided dice to run everything in the game. And it's great. I had a wonderful experience having just played this. Reading through the book gives you a very good sense. The only problem I had with this, there's a lot of flipping back and forth. I think that at some point maybe I will print off the charts, just have them in front of me rather than flipping back and forth through the book. But it was well worth it nonetheless. It was a great experience. I used miniatures anyway, so what I would do is I would generate the dungeon itself, and I will tag a picture of the final dungeon up here as well. But I generated the dungeon itself, and on a separate piece of graph paper where I was keeping track of like the monsters that I encountered, their hit points and stuff. You put miniatures on the board to get a visual representation, because one of the things you need to do, there's corridors and rooms, of course, it's all dungeon crawl-esque kind of stuff. you have to have a marching order for your characters. And so rather than just write down a number on the character sheet for them, I decided to use miniatures to sort of portray that. And then whenever I encountered a monster or monsters, I would pull miniatures out of my collection and put them on the table just as a visual representation. We made it through the dungeon successfully. Our final boss that we encountered was a Medusa. I'll put up that picture as well too. And while I thought the Medusa was a little bit easy to defeat, two of my characters did get turned to stone. Thankfully, I had a cleric in the party, which allowed me to use a blessing spell to remove that curse from them at the end of the game. But I was able to defeat with the Medusa with just two remaining characters. It was a dwarf and a cleric who took on the Medusa and were able to take her down. But this game is a lot of fun. If you are looking for a solo role-playing experience, I would hands down say check this game out, because I think it very much encapsulates that whole idea in just this one book. And it does, you can generate random dungeons with this. I also used the Axebane deck of many dungeons that I had reviewed previously. If you want to go check that out, go back into my my catalog and check that out, the review I did of that. So for half the dungeon, I actually used those cards to generate the rooms rather than roll on the charts in here. And it worked very, very well. I had to adjust a few things here and there, but nonetheless, it worked out really, really well. So you can either use these things, or if you have a supplemental thing like the Deck of Many Dungeons, works fantastically well. Now, while this is all dungeon crawl experience, a few of these expansions actually, notably the Three Rings, actually takes you into a wilderness adventure and is run a little bit differently. There are different monsters in here, different effects for weather and all sorts of stuff. Cool stuff. Really worth the purchase price for these things. Now the game itself, the core game itself, takes characters from levels 1 to 5, and there's an expansion. And forgive me, I don't remember the name of the expansion supplement for this. That takes characters up to 20th level as well too, if you want to fight really big bad monsters and stuff as well too. So For Against the Darkness, a solo RPG experience, really sticks true to its name. Really, really great stuff. I highly recommend it. If you just want to kill some time while you're home by yourself alone. This also has a variant rule system in here to use it to run two different ways. To run a co-op so that you can have two different sets of adventurers exploring a dungeon, or to run it as a rules light RPG. I really, really think that this would be great to introduce people who have never ever played before, or maybe even kids as young as, I would say, like 8. Because it gives them a very, very rules light experience on what role playing is. And then once they get the hang of this, you can move them on to other things, such as, D&D or basic fantasy or any of those kind of things as well too. But I think this is a cool experience, and it really, really made me feel like I was back in high school playing that game that nobody can remember the name of, with graph paper and miniatures and stuff as well too. So a little bit of nostalgia in this game, as well as a cool solo RPG experience. So For Against Darkness, I'm Questwise, and until next time, we're out.